Hi, thanks for joining me on the Everything and Anything in a Big A podcast. Today I have Dr. Sarah Glass, who is a psychotherapist who lives in New York. She's also an author and she does some great speaking events as well. Welcome to the show, Sarah, or
Thank you
Dr.
so much.
Glass, I should say.
You could just call me Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
Basically, what Dr. Glass does is that she is a very huge help in the LGBTQ plus community. You have a lot of clients that I'm sure that are seeking in this day and age are seeking some type of help. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I run a practice, so we get so many requests for psychotherapy, for referrals, for resources, and we're tuned into just what the needs are in New York right now. We also get requests from all over the world, really, from people who say, "We need help. Can you direct me to somebody?"
I always say I try not to get political in my show, but in today's world, there's a lot of things going on, especially in the United States, where you have our new president that has come in and is making lots of changes in the LGBTQ plus community. Just this past week, he removed LGBTQ plus from many federal websites. He removed the word trans. It's going on and on where every week there's something new that he is targeting towards this community. And just, I wanted to see what your thoughts were about that. And if you have some of your clients coming in that are naturally scared, especially if you're a trans person where you're losing potential benefits and health care and the military, people that are in the military, trans people are being affected or will soon be affected. It just the list goes on and on. So what are you hearing from some of your clients and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's such a fine line. And what I'm hearing from people is, how much do I panic? And
Mhm,
how much do I just like wait it out and see if this is propaganda, if this is just someone trying to grandstand and make all
mhm.
these like big statements that don't actually pass into law? And so it's weird for me as a therapist because oftentimes when people come to me with anxieties that seem outlandish,
Mhm.
like monsters come down from the sky, I'm like, okay, let's talk about this rationally.
Yeah.
But this time, people are coming in with these fears and anxieties that should be like out of this world unimaginable. And I'm in the position of saying, actually, this is valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your thoughts whenever Elon so my husband is Jewish, my last name is
Mm.
Randall Friedman,
Well,
and, whenever he went up when Elon went up on stage and did this Nazi salute a few weeks ago, it was one of the most disturbing things I think I've seen in such a long time because you read the history books and this is how things started in Germany where people were looking the other way or not going to get that bad. And then look what happened. The Holocaust happened. And what is your thoughts about what Elon did? Even though he's, oh no, I was doing it as a showing my heart or something. That's not at all what I think it was, in my opinion.
yeah. I was raised in Hasidic Brooklyn. So when I grew up, we had no access to TV, media, secular magazines. I had to sneak out to the Rite Aid on 60th Street in Brooklyn to get a 17 magazine when I was
Yeah.
raised. So we had nothing except for Holocaust memoirs
Yeah.
and Jewish novels. And I was raised on this from a young age. It was like people would sneak into their parents' cabinets, I don't know, in other cultures to find porn. I would
Yeah.
reach in to find like the more graphic Holocaust memoirs.
Yeah.
That's what was in my parents' cabinets. My grandparents are Holocaust survivors. And so seeing the Nazi salute, I was like, oh, this is about to get bad.
Mhm.
And I live in New York. I live in America. I have people I love in America.
Mhm.
But it made me really worried about my trans clients and friends and like colleagues who are seem to be first on this hit list
Yeah.
right now. And I was like, if I love and care about these people, do I really want them to think about what are safe ways to exist right now?
Yeah, and what are your clients saying to you? Are they nervous that this could be another Germany again? Are they worried about I'll just tell you where
Yeah.
I'm coming from as a gay man that's married to a Jewish man, and we've been together for 26 years, and we've had the conversation, at what point do we leave?
Yeah.
And I've also had friends that in December decided to get married just because they thought it could be taken away. If they're hoping they're gonna be grandfathered in if something does happen to same-sex marriage. We do have a rough plan and I think we'll both know if there is a time that we need to leave, and we would probably go to Canada and just pack up what we could and just probably go, and we're lucky this is the one time that we're happy where we don't currently own a house that we rent, because if you own a house, you're in a whole different situation. But that's we are having those serious conversations, and I never thought I'd have to have that conversation about when do we get in our car and when are we driving to Canada with our 2 cats, and it's crazy that we're having those conversations, or that you even have to think about it in a way. It's
I'm so sorry.
insane.
Yeah, I'm so like, I just can't believe I'm even having this conversation with you, and we're not like just talking about queer joy, and we're having like this conversation about when do we leave our country.
Yeah,
Whenever you ask me about clients, just so you know, I'm going to extrapolate to the larger therapy communities I'm a part of and the conversations I'm having with my colleagues about
yeah,
all of our collective clients, just so it's not identifiable.
yeah, absolutely.
But us in the New York therapy community are having these conversations all the time. And it's more like what I'm trying to do is hold space for it so that people can decide on their own. Because I think it's a lot, in some ways, it's similar to, there's some similarity to COVID, where
Mm,
it's like you're the only one that knows what your immune system is like. You're the only one that knows if this is bringing up PTSD for you. You're the only one that knows what the risk is to your body, or that knows a little bit more about what the personal risk is to you when you go outside without a mask or even with a mask or whatever.
mhm,
And I think it's similar now with the queer and trans communities, is that we each know what our inner resources are, what our financial means are, what our personal vulnerability is because of our trauma or our genetics, and how much of this we can tolerate. There might be a point where we say, it maybe hasn't gotten to you must run immediately
right.
yet, but we are no longer willing to live in this fear. And that's
Yeah,
a legitimate point at which to leave if one can. And so everyone gets to decide that for themselves.
yeah. I'm just hoping that it does get better before it
Mm.
gets worse. I'm hoping that I don't know. I have all these scenarios in my head on how it could get better, but let's
Yeah,
hope.
me too. I think we all go through it every day. We're like, okay, this crazy thing happened. This can't be real. We go into like the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining,
Yeah,
this depression. And I hope we don't have to get to acceptance. I hope we could just cycle through the first four and then it goes away.
yeah, exactly. Are you getting do you have a lot more people coming to see you now? Just because, like, I read that like the Trevor Project, for example, that for people to call in if they're thinking of suicide, and their numbers are skyrocketing because of everything that the Trump administration is doing. Are you seeing more clients or getting more requests? And
Yes. Where practice is getting requests, and I want anybody who's listening to know, even if we're full, you can always book a free consult on our website. And we just want to get people to save save affordable affirming therapy.
yeah,
Well, book a consult at soulwellnessnyc.com. One of our licensed therapists will get back to anybody who wants it. Even if you're not in New York, just call us. You don't have to do it alone. And we're not here. Even if we make no money off of the phone call, we don't care. We
yeah.
want people to get therapy and to not have to handle this in isolation.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really great.
Mm.
And I'm in Boston and you're in New York, and so I feel like we're gonna bubble in some way. So I
No.
just couldn't imagine if you're a queer person living in a Midwestern state where it's not acceptable at all. Like, I can't even imagine, like in Idaho, they're trying to get rid of same-sex marriage in Idaho right now. I couldn't even imagine being a gay person or a queer person or lesbian living in Idaho where they're trying to get rid of a marriage that you have with your partner. It's crazy.
Yeah, it was so heartbreaking. I was watching Laverne Cox talk the other day.
I seen her on The View and I thought it was amazing.
When she said, if you can go south, like almost go back in the closet if you can, that was so smart and so heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's just to think that we're saying that, because I feel 10 years ago, we were all so proud whenever gay marriage was or same-sex marriage was granted, and now it's just like we're rolling we've rolled back so far. It's so crazy and so quickly too.
I think we're still in shock. Like,
Yeah,
especially for me, like I worked so hard to come out of the closet. I came out at 32 and I was like, oh, this is great. I'm not living in a high control religion anymore. I can be out and I can be free. And now I just don't even want to believe it.
So let's talk about that. So you grew up, and I know exactly what part of Brooklyn that you were in because we lived in Park Slope, and my husband's family lived on Long Island. A lot of times we would drive through that area of Brooklyn to get out to Long Island. And so tell me about how you discovered for your, like how you, I don't want to say admit, but how you finally came to terms or how you came out finally and felt comfortable being yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it was such a long journey because I was married off at 19 in the Hasidic community. You know exactly what I'm talking about, the men in fur hats and the women in the
Yeah.
wig and the long coats. If you want to see pictures of me and all the garb, you can go onto my Instagram at Dr. SaraGlass. To commercial break, I have a fun piece of trivia for you. You booked me on this podcast, I went to look at your Instagram and I became your 10,000th follower.
Oh, really? That's so
Not
funny.
9. I was like, "This is awesome. You should have 10,000 followers with all the cool gay things that you're doing."
Oh, that's amazing. That's so great that it was you because I was like one day I woke up and I looked, I'm like, "Oh, I have 10,000 followers." So that's amazing. So that's so
Well,
funny.
yeah, I think that the more we can lift each other up and, like, the
Yeah,
more we can just like, we need community right now. We need to be
absolutely.
sharing each other's voices. So I'm so happy for you too, that
Thank you so much.
it's hard. It's hard to keep speaking, and sometimes you're speaking into a void and you're like, "I hope somebody's heart is touched."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
was it hard for you to come
yeah.
out though to your family and to your friends in that community or did
Yeah.
you
So because I was married off at 19, I had 2 children very quickly. And in that community, when you have children, they really want the children to stay religious and to stay in the community. I had my children, I wanted to leave their father by the time I was 24.
Mm,
In order to do so, I signed a divorce agreement in which I promised to raise my kids religious as Orthodox Jews. And if I were to deviate from that, I would essentially be giving him custody of them. And so I knew I was gay. I had been in love with a girl at 15, wrote a New York Times modern love piece about that, was in love with another girl at 19 and broke up with her like in secret to get arranged married. And at 24, when I got divorced, I wanted to date women, but I couldn't because that would mean losing my children.
mm,
And so I stayed in the closet for an additional 10 years and wore the wig, wore the long skirts, pretended to be Orthodox, and tried to be Orthodox. But ultimately, I just couldn't take it anymore. And when my children were like middle schoolers, I moved to Manhattan and changed their schools so they could attend more Americanized schools. And then finally came out of the closet to myself and started dating women. But as people slowly found out, my life just fell apart, did completely.
yeah.
Yeah.
What was your children's reaction?
So they were wonderful. And part of that is I raised my children to be very curious and thoughtful and open minded. And I remember driving past Manhattan one day and there was like a pride parade going on and there was traffic. And my husband at the time was like, "Oh, these animals, they're celebrating like sinful things." And even though I was religious, in the car, I said, maybe it's just people being happy and we should be happy for them. I
Yeah.
wanted children to hear me say that. And so we would have conversations about everyone, about their friends who were lacking social skills. And I would say, it's okay. Sometimes people don't know the right words to say, and we can still be kind to them. And my children also just have the biggest hearts. So by the time I came out to them, they were happy for me. And it explained a lot to them. My daughter said, "Mom, that explains your Netflix history."
Yeah.
She had been like apparently logging into my Netflix account and I was watching a ton of lesbian
Yeah.
romance movies and she knew. So she was like, "Oh, no wonder."
How old was she then?
She was 12,
Okay.
but
Eh,
like just starting to become aware. And my
yeah.
son was like, "Is that why you got divorced?" And he had to live with that, the fact that his parents were divorced. And so it like put his life in context.
Mhm.
And then he goes, "Is that why you have a blue car?" I'm like, "No, I just have a blue car." It's trying to figure things out.
Yeah, yeah. That's great. I feel like kids are coming out earlier now, and kids, I think, are just more accepting. I think kids are still bullies in a lot of ways and mean to other kids still, but I think that kids overall seem to be much more accepting, and they understand more about the LGBTQ plus community than whenever I was in high school. No one would admit that they were gay, or even if you were called gay or whatever, you're like, "No, I'm not." It was a total denial. Now I think kids are coming out, it seems like in junior high and high school even, so it's such a great world now because of that, I think.
Yeah, my daughter came out at 15 as unlabeled, which I loved. She
Yeah,
said, "I don't know what I am, but I know I'm not straight." And I was like, "This is the next level." Because in our day when we came out, it was like, "Okay, you're not in the heteronormative box. So what is your new box so
yeah,
I know where to place you?" But these kids could just say, "I'm whatever. I'm figuring it out." And I'm
yeah,
so proud of her for granting herself that freedom. So she's just like queer identified. I think she's this week she's identifying as bi, but also always leaving herself space to evolve. She's a freshman in college and she's in a conservative state in South Carolina. But what's happened is all the girls around her, they come up to her and they say, "Oh, I once kissed a girl," or "I think I might be gay."
yeah.
Having questions. So she's become like this beacon at her college.
That's awesome. What is she studying?
She's studying psychology and fine art. She wants to be a sex therapist.
That's
Mhm.
awesome.
Oh, I have the best kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What does your son do? Or, like, is he
He's
in
at Columbia and he's pre-med.
wow, what
Yeah.
great kids you have.
Which is
That's
a
amazing.
freaking miracle because in our community, he didn't even learn like he couldn't write an essay until 7th grade.
Wow.
Because of the way he was educated.
And are they in touch with their father still, who I'm assuming is still part of that Jewish community?
They are. They're able to be cordial with him and they've decided to be authentic with him as well.
And is he accepting?
He is.
That's awesome. And how is your relationship with him now? Is it do you are you even on speaking terms?
Yeah, it's very the kids are older now, so it was tough when I was making all those changes, and we did have a court, like, battle, which is in my book, Kissing Girls on Shabbat. But now, like, the kids are grown, they're over 18, and so we'll have occasional back and forth about medical needs or just, like, technical things
Yeah.
that it just there's no more arguing.
Yeah. That's great. So what are we've covered a little bit about what's not so great in the world. I think your kids have switched that narrative for us. So
Yeah.
what do you think are making people in this community, in the LGBTQ plus community, happy now? Are you telling people take vacations, go on trips, spend time with friends? What do you think is making people happy?
I think the queer community is so resourceful. We have had to be creative.
Mm,
One of the things I'm seeing is like humor and queer comedy right now is so helpful. I was listening to Two Dykes and a Mic is one of my comedy podcasts I like this
yeah.
morning. And they were just laughing about the way trans women are on TikTok right now saying, like these beautiful trans women on saying, "Do you want me in the bathroom with your husband?"
I seen that. I love it.
And it's great. Do that. Laugh about this shit because
Yeah.
it's crazy. And so we have to laugh. And I've seen people use their public platforms to speak up for the queer community, which is also so beautiful. What's helping us is not sitting down, not going back in the closet,
Yeah.
and each other. We will find our salvation in each other and in community.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be a very interesting Pride Month this year, whenever June comes around to see what's up like the Target's backing out of giving money to the Pride organization where they're located at, and what companies will actually still participate in it. And I think it's gonna be really interesting, but I think this whole community, though, is really going to come together even more during Pride Month than ever before this year. I think it's gonna be a big I don't want to call it an uprising, but just coming together and being a true community. So I remember like whenever same-sex marriage became legalized right before New York Pride that year, and it was such an amazing feeling how everybody was just so together, and it just we accomplished this, and it was just I just remember that feeling like it was yesterday. It was so amazing, and so I'm hoping that this
Yeah.
June for Pride, that we have that same kind of comeback where people are coming together.
I think especially people like you and I who are a little older, we will get up and celebrate and fight because we don't want the youth to go through what we went through.
Yeah.
And so we are here, like we will wave our flags, we will do whatever we have to do to be seen.
Yeah, and I think the younger generation, like the generation, the Z, the millennials that are out there, I'm hoping that they really step up too because they seem to want to have this freedom and to be able to express who they are. Like your kids, who your daughter says, I don't have a label. That's amazing. So I'm hoping that continues for these future generations and people continue to be their authentic selves.
Yeah, and like that some of these initiatives just become so ludicrous that they have to like fall apart at some point. Like, how do you take the word women out of research grants? What's like what are we gonna do? Erase women, erase gender, but then have a war on it's becoming so self-contradictory that I can't see it being sustainable.
Yeah. Tell me how so your book, I just ordered it today on Amazon actually.
No, thank you.
Kissing Girls on Shabbat. So tell
Yeah.
me a little bit about that, and it's your memoir, it sounds, and so tell me why you decided to do it and how you put it all together.
So I left the Hasidic community and I lived on Long Island for a little while too, actually, followed some of your pipeline. So I left the Hasidics for the modern Jews
Okay.
and left the modern Jews to come out of the closet and be gay. And at 32, I was in New York. And for the first time in my life, I was safe enough to date women and hang a rainbow flag painting over my bed on the Upper West Side. And I looked around me and I felt like this survivor's guilt because I knew that just a few miles away, my nieces and nephews were getting arranged marriage. And so many people were still in closets of so many different kinds. And I really knew that as a therapist. Like I had clients coming to me, they were hiding who they were, like hiding that they had religious doubts, hiding that they didn't feel comfortable in their marriages. Even if they were straight, some people were just like, I got arranged married to this person. I'm not connected with them at all. And I don't want to be here. And I just saw people living in so much fear. And I knew that the only way to change hearts was through a story. I could have gotten up and lectured, and people would have just called me crazy.
Mhm.
But if I told my story and I did it justice, then hope that would help to inspire people. And so I sat down and I started to write. And my first iterations of the book were like, I was so scared to write what really happened because I didn't want to hurt other people or traumatize them. So I wrote this very polished version. Here I am, happy in New York City. And I went to a writing coach and he said, Sarah, you need to get gritty. You need to give us a blood, sweat, and tears. And I dug deeper and then went back and wrote about all the scary things that happened, still trying to do it artistically and sensitively. As a trauma therapist, I use my body a lot in the writing. I tried to write, here's how this experience felt viscerally going through my body. Here's how this assault felt, so that other people could read it and understand for themselves. Oh, that feeling when I have it, that means that something's not right for me either. And I wrote the book because I needed to make an impact. Like I just needed to know I was doing something to help the people I left behind.
The world needs more people like you, I'll just say. You just at the beginning of the interview when you said that people can call or making a consultation appointment, and now you just hearing about why you wrote this book and stuff, it's you should really feel like how you should really know how amazing you are because it's really not it's a unique quality, I think, today. So that's just I'm so glad you're on my show. I'm glad people get to see who you are and stuff because it's really quite unique, I think.
Thank you. I know that feeling of feeling hopeless and feeling like there's no way out. Every single day on my Instagram, people reach out to me and say, I'm stuck. I'm where you used to be. And they just sometimes ask questions, sometimes just tell me that they're feeling stuck. It's just so important for people to know that there's someone who made it out alive,
Mhm.
just so that they have this little feeling of maybe there's some strength in me that can help me do that too.
Do you think there's a number of people in the community that you grew up in that still are in the closet and that people that I guess I would say that you would hope that they'll come out one day or they just they're probably it's so part of who they are and they wouldn't do it at this point?
I think that there are both. Like, there are people who I think will. They're looking at me and I can tell from their questions. They're already in therapy. They're already thinking to themselves, like, there is an end date to
Mm,
my life.
wow.
May not be now, might be when their kids are older, but I can tell they're like reaching for something. And then there are some people who just won't even reach out because they don't think it's possible for them to leave.
Yeah.
And then people are waffling in the middle.
Both men and women?
Yeah,
Wow.
it is interesting. You would think it would just be like the women who reach out, but the men find me too, and all the time. And they're just like, they don't want this. It's people sometimes call high control religions patriarchal systems that benefit the men. I didn't find that with Orthodox Judaism. I found that people of all genders, men, women, non binary folks who are stuck in a gender presentation of sorts, were all being controlled by what the rabbis said or what they thought scripture said. And when anyone's being forced into a relationship of any kind, like being forced married,
Yeah.
they're not having fun. It's not like enjoyable. It's something that they're doing because they think it's what God wants.
Do you think it's a little cultish?
So I go back and forth on that a lot. In some ways, I wish that I had come from an actual cult with a cult leader,
Yeah.
because then I would think, okay, at least like Warren Jeffs, like someone has a Mercedes, someone's benefiting, someone has 70 wives.
Yeah.
My sacrifice, it makes sense. Someone got something out of it. But
Yeah.
in Orthodox Judaism, it's there is no real leader that's benefiting. There's no one who's gaining wealth. The rabbis are generally poor and they're staying up all night answering these difficult rabbinic questions. So I feel like the high control group probably fits more than cult for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah, that makes sense. Tell me about you have a lot of events on your website and I ha tell me, like, what happens when somebody comes to one of your events? Are you reading from your book? Are you talking about your book? Are you open for questions? Because if you go to just so we don't forget, it's drsaraglass.com is Dr. Sarah Glass's website. Great things on there about her book, about different events, about who she is. Take a look at it. So tell me about your events. If I come to one of your events, what would happen?
So I'm going through a transition point right now. I just got agented for public speaking, which is
Uh,
that means someone is representing me, Simon and Schuster Speakers Bureau, and they'll be sending me out on lectures. And so that's a switch from just doing book tour to becoming an inspirational speaker. I'm so excited that I get to do that. And so for the first 6 months, I did book tour, which is where I talk mostly about my story. And now what I'm doing is taking the concepts from my story and transferring them into larger ideas that can help anyone who's not Hasidic or not from maybe not even gay, like just people, human beings
yeah,
who want to be more authentic. And so this month, I have a think tank going on social media where people are just sending me their random questions. And I'm using that to learn what do you really want to know about.
amazing.
So you'll see if you come to my book tour event, I rarely say the same exact thing twice. I'm always just like switching it up and trying to think of what's the most impactful thing I can say and what do you really need right now.
Yeah, and you're going to different areas of like, you're in Vancouver, then you're in different areas, so
Yeah.
I'm sure it probably the questions or what you're speaking about probably varies depending on what city you're in too, I'm sure.
Yeah, and different needs, right? Some communities are so open and they already have all gender restrooms. They already have parents who are raising their children to be open-hearted. And so their questions are about their personal growth. And then there are communities that are more like closed off from the outside world or more conservative that might have questions about is being gay even real? And so it does depend sometimes on the location.
Yeah. What's the most interesting talk that you've had so far? What have you is there one you can think about that somewhere that you've gone, or is there somewhere that you're looking forward to going to because you think it's gonna be just a completely different, vibe than that you've been at?
I was at a talk last week at the United Synagogue of Hoboken, New Jersey.
Okay.
And they were like the sweetest congregation. I didn't know what to expect. They invited me for an author's brunch, and I sit down. My daughter came with me, and before they introduced me, this choir got up and they had composed a song in honor of my book. And the rabbi and a few of the like men and women in the congregation just got up and sang a song. And the song was about raising our children to have their own free hearts and minds. And I just think it's like the most touched I've ever been at my
Oh
book.
my god, that's amazing.
They were just so sweet. I also go ahead.
Did anybody video that for you? Like, I hope you got that on video somehow.
I didn't manage I got some of the talk on video, but we didn't manage to get like, I want them to get it on video because it's
Yes.
precious. It was just precious. I just really appreciate, like, people being so open to the themes of the story and inviting me in to their homes. I did a talk for the UJA at a clothing store on Long Island where they were donating proceeds from that day's purchase to the UJA. And it was really sweet. We had 60 women who are mothers on Long Island coming in to hear about the story and then to support their local organization.
Amazing. I think you're doing amazing stuff. Like I said, I think you're an incredible person. You're so unique. Be sure to go and follow Sarah. It's Dr. Sarah Glass on Instagram. Her website is Dr.
SaraGlass.com.
DrSarahGlass.com. Check
Yeah.
it out. Again, she's got many events. I'm going to look for an event and I would love to meet you in person. So I'm going to
Well,
find one and then make a trip out of it. So
yeah, I'll be in Boston on the March 16th at the Lair House Tavern, which is
March.
like a Jewish learning center. You should come with your husband.
I will. We will
Yep.
do that. We will see you then for sure.
They have drinks and food, and I'll be doing a piece on just using writing as inspiration for personal growth.
Awesome. It was so nice to have you on. Thank you so
Mm.
much. Again, DrSarahGlass.com. Check out her website and go to Amazon, buy her book. I just bought it today and put some comments on what you think about her book. And be sure to follow her again, Dr. Sarah Glass on Instagram. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everybody. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And we'll talk to you next week.